Welcome to Amplify, a podcast series by the Association for Accounting Marketing. I'm your host. My name is Patrick Huegel. I'm a marketing manager at AAFCPAs in New England. Joining me today is Jennifer Hamberger. Jen is the Chief Marketing Officer at Maxick, a top 100 firm located in Buffalo, New York. Jen also has 30 plus years of progressive leadership in a variety of organizations, including B2B, consumer packaging goods, and professional services companies, so she brings a wide perspective. Welcome to the podcast, Jen.
Thanks for having me, Pat. It's nice to be part of the Amplify podcast series.
Great. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to launch something new. As marketers, I feel like we're constantly launching new things and planning for the next thing. So I think it's a very relevant topic. So let's get right into it. Jen, when talking about how to launch something new, do you follow a specific process when implementing or marketing something new?
We do. Maxick has approximately 300 people spread across 4 offices in New York State. So with that type of size and geographic distance, process becomes really important in terms of implementing any new launch. Trying to standardize how we go to market, whether it's with a service or a product or even with an internal initiative, it's really important that we're using the same process each time. And we do have a process that is very inclusive. We generally look, for example, if it's a particular industry area, we look to pull together practice team members, including subject matter experts. And we basically put together planning sessions where we all sit down and we pull out the whiteboard and we basically sit down and try to identify what I call our why. I always start our meetings begin with the end in mind. And if we can't in that first meeting, define why we're doing what we're doing, then how are we going to be able to communicate that to other people, prospective clients or our internal customers, our employees? So it's really important to me that as a team, we sit down and identify the why. And there's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek, who basically talks about start with the why. And it helps you identify not just what you do, but why you do it. And so once we've done that and we've agreed to that, it makes it a much easier process to then sit down and start hashing things out in terms of who's the audience, what types of tactics are we going to use to appeal to that audience. And then we end up basically assigning various tasks to various team members and giving responsibility across the team, and finding also a champion for the particular team that we're talking about, because that person is the one that's going to be within, let's say it's the tax department, basically making the others on the team accountable for what they're supposed to be following up on. We do recommend frequent meetings, which in an accounting firm can be a difficult part of the process because everybody is so busy and they've got client time that they need to be spending. But it's important that we do have scheduled meetings. The cadence of them can change. It can start off with quite frequently, and then as the launch gets rolling, it can be less frequent. But it's important for accountability. It's important to check in with people and make sure that we're hitting the timelines that we have already established and agreed to, just to make sure that we are getting some momentum and that we're actually working toward our objectives. And I think part of that process, one of the most important things is as a team agreeing on what success looks like and defining it. Whether it's through a measurable objective, like for example, a revenue goal or a number of installs goal, or something less tangible that can sometimes happen with initiatives, internal initiatives, but to at least agree on what success looks like for our team.
Right. Makes sense to start with that too. You mentioned products um, and services. Do you find that there's much of a difference between launching products versus launching initiatives or services?
There is. I think the basics stay the same in terms of there are similarities just because marketing is marketing. You need to identify who your audience is. You need to identify who the competition is. You need to find a position for both, whether it's a product or, for example, an internal initiative. And you need to come up with what I call an integrated plan, where we can communicate across multiple channels, as well as, again, define measurable objectives. I think the difference with products is that we have to do more competitive research, more rigorous competitive research. And I think also part and parcel of that is you need to get generally a legal team involved to assist with trademark searches, just to make sure that anything that we launch, is going to be, in fact, unique, that we can trademark it, that we can own it, if you will. And so there's a higher bit of complexity that's involved with products.
Okay, that's interesting. And in terms of similarities, I think I just kind of touched on that a little bit, but you'd say there's a fair amount of similarities in launching new products versus initiatives or services.
Yeah, you always have to start with, well, who are we doing this for? I said we start with the why, but who is our audience? And if it's internal, how are we going to communicate with them? What are their preferred methods of communication? And what do we have at our disposal? If it's an external audience, prospective clients, same exercise. How do they like to be communicated with, and how do we plan to communicate with them? And what do we plan to communicate?
Right.
So, and again, I can't stress enough the importance of whatever we do, we need to check in and make sure that we're on the right path. That's why the meetings that I talked about, the team meetings, need to occur, because we need to check in and see where we are and if we're making progress. And if we're not progressing at the rate we want to, do we need to adjust tactics? Generally, I find that we don't need major course correction. If we've done our jobs correctly as a team and we're communicating correctly. But sometimes things need tweaking. And sometimes we need to have serious discussions about whether or not we need to keep moving forward. Because the last thing that we want to do is spend time or resources on something that simply isn't going to yield results.
Yeah. What have you found to be kind of your main challenges when launching anything new?
The main challenge is communication. So as marketers, it's the most important thing that we do, but it's also, I would say, the hardest thing that we do, because getting communication right is difficult in this day and age. We have so many different channels available at our disposal for communication, yet still miscommunication happens frequently. There's something called the rule of 7. It's an old marketing adage about it takes 7 outreach efforts to reach the prospective client or the prospective consumer before they actually absorb the message that you're sending. That number has changed, and I've heard different ones over the various time changes and thoughts of marketing tactic changes. But I think the underlying thread is that you need to communicate frequently, and you need to do it consistently, whether that's internally or externally. And I think finding that balance is really an art. But I always tell our team, my team internally, over communicate. It may seem like we are banging the same drum over and over again, but it's really important, with people being as busy as they are and as bombarded as we all are with emails and texts and the social media that we're all on, that it takes quite a bit to be top of mind and to stay top of mind. So I tell them to err on the side of over communication. So that's one of the major challenges. I would say another is managing expectations. And what I mean by that is unrealistic expectations, because in theory, when we've done our meetings and agreed to what success looks like, everybody should be on the same page. But if in the midst of a project, things aren't going the way some of the team members envision them, you end up having to manage the frustration that can come from that sometimes. And that's not a good use of anybody's time. And it has led at times to projects being aborted simply because, we weren't all on the same page. But that's few and far between. And I think, we learn more with each launch that we do. And I think that managing those expectations is very, very important right from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's amazing how much comes down to communication and how many issues arise from miscommunication too.
It really is one of the most important things that we do as marketers.
Yeah. So after all that, how do you know if you've been successful in your launch of your new product or service?
Well, obviously there are tangible outcomes and there are intangible outcomes. So the tangible ones are easy to identify. You hit a particular revenue goal, or we've sold a certain number of installations of, for example, our healthcare business analytics software. Those are quantifiable and obviously easy to check against what we agreed as a team would be a goal, or an objective rather. But they're sometimes less tangible. For example, when we basically created and then launched our purpose statement in the firm, we put things out there. We communicated the purpose statement in every way that we possibly could: screensavers, mouse pads, on our intranet, on the walls in our lobbies of our buildings. It's everywhere. We have it inside notebooks that we use at firm events. So and we bring it up frequently ourselves during our planning meetings. But it's when a member of the professional staff or one of our subject matter experts, we're in the midst of a discussion about how things are progressing, and that person will say, well, I think this really reflects our purpose statement, or poses the question, does this reflect our purpose statement? So when that's happening, I know that we've been successful through those different channels of getting the message across, that we do need to check on our purpose and make sure that we're living it through these launches.
Great. Well, that's about all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer. I feel like we got a lot of great information, and I feel like I learned something new.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoy these podcasts. I watch them myself, so it was a pleasure to be involved. Great.
And so this wraps up another episode of the AAMplify podcast. Please watch for another podcast from the Association for Accounting Marketing next month.